All right, well, welcome everybody to the A to Z of card grading. My name's Adam. I am one of the hosts on the You Can't Comp This NBA Trading Card podcast. This is my co-host, Russell Gibson.
Good morning, Melbourne. Hope you're well today.
Joining us today from the Hobby Australia and the designer of 130 Point, we have Laine Pearce.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And we have joining us from Unboxed, we've got Jesse Taweel and Raydan joining us.
Hello, guys.
All right, let's get things started. This is a simple one. What sort of cards do you guys normally get with regards to grading? What do people grade?
All right, we get everything. Literally, like the topic A to Z, right? We get everything from AFL cards all the way through the gamut. People will send some weird and wonderful stuff. We've seen Queen Elizabeth cards come through that get graded that are actually turns out to be quite valuable. We had no idea at the time. You know, you can even do like things like Pokemon coins, packs, tickets. Yeah, you'd be amazed at some of the stuff that comes through and you're like, I didn't even know this existed. Where's this come from?
Tickets are an interesting one. So do you get any high grades back with regards to ticket stubs? And
Yeah, look, like anything, some people are very smart in the way they handle their tickets. They know what they've got.
Autographs?
Autograph tickets as well, yeah. We've seen them too. It's obviously good if you can get, say, a debut game from a big player and it's autographed, right? Those things go for huge, huge dollars. And, you know, we can't say we've had too many massive ones, but we've had stuff from like Pele's like World Cup finals and things like that come through that, you know, those things can really command a high premium.
Awesome.
Can we hear from the guys from BGS and CGC and then come back as to why you would send different cards to different grading companies?
Similar to what Laine was saying, we pretty much have a lot of TCGs across, Dragon Ball, One Piece, and very unique cards from the Japanese era for Pokemon. We've had like some Pokemon boarding passes submitted through us, which was very cool to see. They were quite like jumbo cards and stuff like that, as well as a lot of vintage phone cards, surprisingly, as well. I didn't know existed. But yeah, with Beckett, I feel like they pretty much complement a lot of Dragon Ball One Piece TCGs a lot better than the other grading companies. And that seems to be a fan favorite across all of our consumer base. But yeah, that's pretty much from the Beckett side.
Basically, regarding what in the CGC side, we have a lot of comics that come our way, and it's always good to see things come from different sides of the spectrum. For me personally, there's nothing better than seeing vintage books come. These aren't things we get to often see on a daily basis, and I feel like given that we are in Australia, we don't really get access to the stuff that the USA people have access to better than we do. For me, when I get CGC comics coming in from the 60s or 70s, it's a beautiful thing to have in hand and to grade it and be able to give it to a customer and saying, this is part of your PC, it's incredible. And there's a lot of pros and cons to it, but for us, it's just a gratification of being able to do that for our customers.
Awesome. What's one thing, just one card you've seen that probably shouldn't have been graded?
That is a tricky one. You put me on the spot here. I can't actually think of it. Like for me, shouldn't be graded is very different to someone else. We've got a customer and he's known by a few people here in the building. I don't even know if he might even be here today. He's into art and things like he's a little bit, he's got a bit of a different mindset about collecting than a lot of us sort of, traditional collectors might have. He sent us an entire 2019-20 base set Prism rookies that he had folded in half and bent, and we sent them all to SGC, so they got SGC 1s, and he's got the entire set, and apparently he's turned it into an art piece. He's got a guy that's done a whole bunch of work for him, and they're trying to put it into some sort of art.
Intentionally with the one grading.
Yes, it's because it's a Pop 1.
Pop 1, of
Pop
course.
1 set.
All the ones.
I still haven't seen it in its full glory yet, but I know he's working on something with it. So to me, I would never do that, but to him, it's something unique.
He posted that to a Facebook group, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
We can name and shame him, can't we?
You can.
I can't remember who it was.
How about you guys? Any unique cards that you probably wouldn't recommend be sent off for grading?
I mean, yeah, similar to Laine's response, but yeah, essentially, a lot of people have sent some cards that have been completely folded in half, but it's all up to the collector, right? Like a lot of these cards are people's cards from childhood, and again, so, it's all about the collecting side of the hobby, so to assist someone to get their childhood memories encapsulated is probably a very important part to the whole grading side of things. So just because it's not potentially going to score a 10 doesn't mean it's not worth grading, right? So, we cater to the customer to just make sure they're, happy with, the results and try and get them the best results possible.
Brilliant. And you, Ray?
I agree. I think it all comes down to individual preference. If a customer wants to hold on a bit of his nostalgia and a bit of his childhood and he wants to grade it, doesn't matter how much you agree, you want to grade it or not, as long as the customer's happy, that's all it comes down to.
The next part of this question is too, of what I would like to talk to you about is the specifics to each grading company. So for example, which company is more suited for a particular card? For thicker cards, I would think you'd send to BGS, but what are some of the other examples you can think about with that? And you can even talk about to flipping cards, for example. Is there a particular card that you would send to a grading company that you think you'll get a better return on that?
Yeah, sure. Predominantly the things we see that go really well at PSA are obviously more modern cards with thinner card stock. There's nothing to say you can't do thicker stuff, but usually thinner is probably a bit more of their forte.
Yeah, definitely.
They do have the ability to do thicker stuff. But
PSA is more known for their 30-point cards.
Yeah, a lot of under sort of 75 point and under is typically a lot more bread and butter, but you can, people do thicker cards as well sometimes. But it just is harder to get a PSA 10 on a thicker card. And because they don't have that intermediary between a 10 and a 9, it kind of makes it just something that, you've got to take into account. I guess the PSA cover a lot, right? They cover vintage a lot now. For a long time, they weren't as vintage orientated, but they've become a very big player in that market. So you can, in terms of years, it covers pretty much all years.
Why has vintage become more for PSA recently?
I think it's just a general, appeal in the market for PSA.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's got the general appeal across the board. It's made itself into that brand name that people associate with card grading.
Yeah.
Predominantly, they've also been able to scale their capacity, increase their throughput, and keep their turnaround times down relatively. Not perfect. Nobody's perfect, right?
It's trending in the wrong way.
It's trending in the wrong way again,
Yeah.
but we're also seeing a massive surge again in the number of people grading, and I'll firmly blame that on Pokemon.
Yeah, definitely.
It is 100% Pokemon related, hence why they've increased the turnaround times on their TCG categories and things like that. And these guys can probably attest the other companies are going to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
So things like Pokemon that are good for grading at PSA, but I'll let these guys talk to things like One Piece and that, and what might be better suited to some of those companies.
Absolutely. Let's hear from the lads. Yeah.
Yeah, just on the Beckett front, in regards to the One Piece, Dragon Ball, TCGs, mainly again the slabs themselves do really complement the cards, and a lot of people do chase that kind of look just because of the type of foilings and whatnot on these particular TCGs, especially with the arts. I mean, the main thing with Beckett, I think everybody's pretty much trying to chase is the infamous black label. And again, when that feeling when you hit that black label is quite exhilarating. So
I've never hit one. What does it feel like?
It's amazing. If you want, mate, you can check out our page. We've got plenty of black label showcases on there. So,
can you please explain to us what a black label is?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm not sure everyone would know that. Yeah.
For those that are new to the grading scene, so the grading companies essentially do their grading assessment based on 4 criteria, which is centering, surfaces, corners, and edges. Now, with Beckett, they actually provide you a breakdown of the subgrades for your particular card. It's pretty much a point system as well. So from 1 to 10, they'll assess your card. A black label is essentially a perfect score across all 4 criteria. So 10 for centering, 10 for edges, 10 for corners, 10 for surfaces. It is extremely hard to achieve.
Very, very difficult.
It is very difficult, and I believe that's pretty much the reason why a lot of people do opt for their One Piece and Dragon Ball cards to go to Beckett, just because of the print quality of these cards.
Yeah.
As opposed to Pokemon, the mass production I've seen personally has been declining in what I've seen that's come my way. Those other TCGs, and same with sports, the leniency with Beckett in regards to like surface defects, I've noticed are a lot more lenient in comparison to PSA. Beckett are more crucial on centering on a particular card. So that's a key known difference that I've seen with a lot of the cards submitted through us.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Can we talk about CGC now too? Yeah.
So with CGC, the prime grading you want to get is a standard 9.8. That to us is the equivalent of a 10 in the TCG world.
Yeah, right. Interesting.
To get a 9.8 is exceptional.
Yeah.
Anything from 9.2 to 9.6 is fantastic as well, given the age of the book. But ideally, look, I've graded now to date. I think we just did our stats for the last 12 months. We've just submitted just under 11,000 books. 11,000 books, 110 9.9.
Right, okay.
Wow.
9 10s. It is a unicorn to chase. So if you can chase a 10, and look, if you hit that 10, that's just incredible. But ideally, for us in the comic book world, our 9.8s are the 10s.
Yeah.
And anything above is just a blessing. They won't just hand out that grade for the sake of handing it out. Right? They'll dissect every single part of that book And there's a lot of factors to take in consideration. They'll check the surface, the spine, the cornering. They'll go through page by page, make sure the paging are all white to off-white. They've got to check every single defect. And then when they are checking stuff like this, they've also got to assume that if it does come with a fold-out page or a sticker and it's been removed, these are things they need to identify before issuing that book.
Must take them a long time to grade each book.
It's a pretty lengthy process. I mean, ideally, you've got comic books that have 30, 40 pages that can go all the way up to the thicker novels that hit close to the 70, 80 pages, which also falls into a different bracket of grading as well. But I mean, I have hit, in my collection, I've hit 2 10s, and I have submitted on my own personal thing just over 3,000 books, for PC. It's a unicorn. But if it does come, I can assure you, the one thing that we are known for, we give you a dance that comes with that 10. Right? You'll get the little gimmick dance that comes with it.
So we haven't talked much about dollars so far. So can we come back to Jesse and Laine and talk about what are some of the comps on a Black Label and what are some comps on a PSA 10? Because it's okay to talk about dollar values, guys. We can do it, yeah.
Yeah, all good. Yeah. Like anything, it comes down to the individual card itself. So certain modern cards, you might get a bump of, say, 2 times from a raw for a PSA 10. Like some of them, like if it's a base Prism rookie card, you might bump it up if you're lucky 2 times, maybe 1.5. It's not a huge bump. But if you go to something like a Michael Jordan rookie card, right? So something from the 80s, which has got terrible production quality, you can pick up an authentic version of that now. I think they're around 2,000 to 3,000 Australian, maybe 4, somewhere around there. So they're not overly expensive. But then if you've got a PSA 10, you're talking hundreds, 200,000 plus for a PSA 10 of that card.
One recently sold for, it was 500,000.
Yeah, they're moving up again.
Yeah.
They came right down, now they're moving back up again. It's just, it's the old roller coaster's on its way up. So
it was 480 USD.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, so it's just, it really does come down to the card in terms of, older cards that get 10s, like, the Mickey Mantle rookie, which isn't a rookie, that's a PSA 10, there's only like 3 of them in the world or whatever. Yeah. We're talking like cards now that are going to sell for probably $50 to $100 million.
Alrighty, we are going to take a break for a minute from today's paneling conversation. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors. Thank you to the team at fastbreaktradingcards.com. Go onto their website, you'll find all of their sports trading cards, Fanatics memorabilia, entertainment, TCG, Disney Lorcana, Pokemon, One Piece, Star Wars, all of your supplies needs. They also offer a grading service with both PSA and also BGS. Pre-order your trading cards through Fast Break Trading Cards. Also gift cards, location-wise, in the very conveniently placed 75 Tulip Street in Cheltenham, Friday 12 till 6, Saturday 9 till 5, and Sunday 10 till 4. Thank you very much to the lads at Fast Break Trading Cards.
Yeah, I just think as a consumer, for me, the big thing between BGS and PSA is the sell point, the after sale. So that's what I'd like to talk to you about now is the Black Label. So talk to us a little bit about that, because we're talking about the CGC unicorn. For me, it's the BGS unicorn is the Black Label.
Yeah, for sure. So just in relation to Black Labels, there are a lot of factors involved as well, mainly being the population report of the Black Label. If it's a very low pop count, you tend to find that the cards are a lot more expensive based off that, purely on that basis. But from what I've seen in terms of completed solds on eBay and all the marketplaces and whatnot, the Black Labels generally tend to fetch around, I'd say, a fair assessment would be maybe 3 to 4 times what a PSA 10's value would be worth. Rough guesstimate, really. Whereas, a BGS Gold 10 in comparison to a PSA 10, you might only see maybe a 20 to 30% difference, depending on the card again. It all comes down to that population.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'm gonna take things down a bit more of a serious path now, just because I want to. Integrity with grading. Obviously, we want cards graded for that integrity purpose. We want to know what the actual grade is. But over recent years, there's been a lot of, I suppose, drama concerned with cards being crossed over with fake cards being graded by grading companies.
Trimmed cards is also an issue.
Trimmed cards has been another one. I don't know how that translates in the comic space, but what are your guys' thoughts with regards to integrity, regulation, and the future of that? How do we keep this safe?
Yeah, what are the grading companies doing for consumers to keep us safe? I'm definitely interested in that too.
Yeah, look, one of the biggest things that I try and get across to customers with PSA is that they have what is called a grade guarantee, essentially.
Yep.
Now, there's a few intricacies with that. Basically, they will guarantee the value of the card at its whatever they grade it to for the life of the card. The only thing is that it's got to be something you've bought from someone else. So you can't be the original grader of the card, because that in itself, right, would cause problems. Because if you were able to trim a card, send it in, and then you could then say, oh, this is trimmed, and you get your money, right? So
Knowingly manipulate the system.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So there is that little caveat there. So they put their money where their mouth is in some regards.
Yeah. You also do pay for this privilege though too. We probably should add that to it.
You do. You pay the premium, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You know, whereas there's flat rates with companies like Beckett, PSA charge you based on the value of the card, which is probably the biggest sticking point for most people when it comes to PSA.
Yeah, definitely.
And also the fact that they will upcharge you if you send your card in a lower category, it grades well, and now it's worth more.
Yeah.
I don't say I necessarily agree with it. It's just that's their business model, and they've had it that way before I started doing it. I'd started 2016, I think I sent my first submission. So
it's their system, but it's also a transparent system.
Yeah, they've always told it. But then there's other people who will say, oh, but they'll give you a 10 because you get an upcharge. Well, like, you could say that, but ultimately they grade that many cards. It wouldn't be in their interest to start handing out 10s just to get extra money, because it devalues their brand. So it's just one of those things. You sort of have to decide for yourself, are you comfortable with the way the grading company I want to submit through works? Yeah. Whether that be PSA, BGS, SGC, CGC, any of them. You know, even the Australian companies, you have to be comfortable. You have to do your own research and figure it out for yourself.
True. Well, I mean, if I was told I had to pay more because my card was going to be worth a lot more, pretty sure I'd be okay with that.
We'll put it this way: most people have paid the bill when we send it to them and are happy, but you do occasionally get people who query it, and legitimately.
Imagine one of those PSA 1s that were folded in, SGAs, but coming back as a 2.
Yeah, I did actually prank him and told him 2 of them were 2s. They were all 1s, but I had to play with him a bit.
Goodness gracious. But with regards to registries, internal integrity, obviously PSA are different where they have a guarantee to the public. What about the other other grading companies? How do they deal with these issues that are creeping up? And we're not going to sugarcoat it. We've seen this happen in the hobby. So there's been a rise of counterfeit cards.
On all grading companies, it's not just BGS or PSA. I think all the companies have had issues over the years.
It's an inherent issue in any industry where there's money involved, let's be fair.
Yeah, just on the Beckett front and both PSA as well. Generally, when our customers approach us, we're the first point of contact. And part of what we provide to our customers is an inspection service as well as a pre-grade and cleaning service. Now, my personal care of duty is to try and identify if there are any fake cards within that customer's lot, which again, if they are identified, we do notify the customer and just say, hey, look, this most likely isn't authentic, so please don't send it. Now, having said that, would be, say, one instance where even if it is sent to Beckett itself, they've actually encapsulated a card saying, so not so much for a fake card, but stuff that's been modified. They will still encapsulate the slab, but they'll label it as a silver label saying authentic altered, and they'll actually provide you with a little sticky note regarding their notes.
So it's transparent.
It is transparent, yeah, correct. And if they notice that it is not a legitimate card, they just won't encapsulate it.
I guess I've got a follow-up with regards to that. The authentic. We've talked about this on the show before. We've got a fake kaboom that was signed by the player, graded by PSA, or the auto is authenticated, but it just says trading card.
Yeah, so they've recently changed it.
Yeah.
Because there was there was a few issues with that exact problem.
Yep.
So they identified that there was a lot of people getting duped into thinking they were buying a real card.
Correct.
Because that designation means it's graded by a completely separate part of PSA, but they're using the same slabs and labels.
Correct.
So they've now changed it. I think it's they used to use blue labels. They went to the red label, but now they've gone back to a different color label. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So
I can't remember the exact details because we don't
don't
submit to that part of the service.
Yep.
But I know they'd made changes specifically to address that problem. Yeah, because there were people getting duped.
It would be very confusing getting a card that you thought was authentic, and you're like, no, it was just the autograph that was authenticated. And the card's not real. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Would you like to add anything to that, Ray? What is CGC doing to improve the health of grading for people in the community?
As in what CGC does to improve the help of customers with their books?
How are they keeping customers safe so that you know what you're paying for?
So look, I'm a big customer and supporter of CGC. I've based my whole business model of just really pretty much supporting them.
Yeah.
I do also sub with CBCS as well, but we will, like, CGC made a very smart business move just under a year ago, which was something that took them from being top tier to the top of the top. CGC opened up a JSA department, all right? And the only thing CBCS had over that was the fact that they could verify signatures and encapsulate your comics and provide a yellow label under their brand.
Yeah.
So now that CGC's opened this, it's just demolished kind of the integrity of CBCS. But CGC do take a lot of pride in what they do. They're very notorious. They do pretty much care and hold and package your goods to the best of their ability. And more often than not, they do really look after the customer.
Yeah.
So in my experience, on a few slipped occasions where the graders probably had a bad day.
Yeah.
All right, but generally they are pretty good with your collectibles.
So what type of things can they slip up on that we need to be aware of to look out for?
What they can slip on?
Yeah.
Look, sometimes I think they might... Look, every time you have a printing run, some printing run can be confused as a spine defect. That's not the case. So some books come in certain print form that have, say, there's certain texture to some books.
Yeah.
All right? Some books can be printed with texture.
Yeah.
That texture can be often confused as a spine tick.
Sure.
And they'll downgrade your book thinking it is a tick, where in fact it's part of the book itself, which is a bit of a shame because I don't think they take the time to actually understand what's being printed on the book and you're kind of being defected for it.
There must be so many different nuances for them to learn to
There
take
is.
in.
There's so many... Look, in regards to comic books, you don't just have an A4 piece of comic paper being put forward.
Yeah.
Now we're no longer in the 60s or 70s or 30s. We're now, moving into the new millennium.
Yep.
And this new millennium now has a lot of foils.
Oh,
They've got
there's
9
stamped
different
covers,
variations of
there's
foils.
So many different
You do.
textures.
So we are published comic book publishers right now.
Yep.
We're on our 20th published book.
Okay.
But our books come in different variations and foils. So we've got crystal, pixel, metal covers.
Yep.
We've got leather covers. So again, leather covers aren't really known to the public. So because they come with styrations in them, it could be misinformed as a print run, but they're not. So you just got to inform CGC and continually update them, letting them know what you have, and then they start coming to the table, and it's more of an understanding. It's a help. End of the day, these grading companies, they are who they are, but people like Laine, us, we also let them know what they're doing as well, because they have to know. They're not going to be in up to scratch with everything that's happening. So it's important for us to actually inform them as well.
Yeah. From an education standpoint, and just before we move on to the next topic, from a personal experience rather than specific grading companies, have you experienced people bringing in fake cards? And what advice and education do you give to those people when they do?
Yeah, we've had some very specific experiences where people come in with their cards they've bought from like eBay or somewhere.
Yep.
And I had, unfortunately, several times we get a lot of fake Jordans. I'm not going to lie, they're probably for us in terms of, and fake Pokemon too.
It's the most faked card.
Fake Pokemon is generally cheap, so people are they're a little bit disappointed when they find out they've got the, whatever version you want to call it, it comes from the $2 shop.
Yep, the glossy version.
Yeah, you see them a mile away. Once you've looked at enough Pokemon cards, you can see a fake one a long way away. But the Jordan stuff is difficult because people will buy them off, say, like eBay or a marketplace or something, thinking that they're buying a legitimate card, but you bring them in and you have to, unfortunately, inform them that they've spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on a fake card. And it's always hard to do, and we often say to people, look, we believe this is fake. We're not going to 100% say no every single time. There's some that are just very clearly. And what we will often do is say to people, look, we're happy to try and submit it in the lowest category for you if you really want to double check. And that way, if it's fake, you're only paying like $40.
Sure.
You're not paying $400 or $1,000 like you would have to if it was real.
Yeah, correct.
So we try where we can to give people that, don't just believe us, we'll let someone else tell you. But we do see it a bit and it's unfortunate. And that just comes down to, like you said, there's money in this market. People will use it to, unfortunately, take advantage of people.
BGS, do you see many fakes being submitted through you?
Not necessarily, to be honest. Again, a lot of the customer base are pretty spot on with the cards that they're submitting. There's only been, one or two instances where like purchase lots from garage sales and whatnot. But again, they're quickly identified and just not pretty much submitted. So again, that first point of contact that I try to do for all the customer base would be to just cut it out from the lot to avoid that, mitigate the risk. But yeah, I think it's a bit concerning. There's a lot of really good counterfeit, even great, like fake graded PSA slabs out there, which again, a lot of people can fall victim just because they don't know what to look for. But yeah, it is an education kind of thing. So we try to create awareness to the people that we pretty much deal with, and yeah.
So we could probably talk about the registries at this point. It helps you identify which cards are potentially fake slabs. Is there a BGS registry you can talk to us about that?
So there is a population report where you can do a serial lookup.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have a scan of the graded card itself, which I know PSA pretty much do across all their submissions.
And that's one of my favorite parts about PSA, because I actually use that as a knowledge base, so I know what a real card should look like and what a real slab should look like. It's
The Beckett lookup itself, it does give you the date that the card was graded. It does give you that grading information as well. And essentially, we do reach out to the Becker representatives to verify certain slabs for our customers, just in case there is any uncertainties.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I haven't seen a fake counterfeit Beckett slab myself or anything come to us for cross-grading or anything like that. So that I'm unsure that actually is out.
Laine, can you add anything about the PSA registry that we didn't touch on just then?
Yeah, I guess, like you said, PSA is a little bit different. As last, I think it's 2 years or thereabouts, they've done imagery on all cards.
Yeah.
There was a period where they only did imagery on higher-end cards, and before that, none of the cards. So not every card has a PSA image. It's only more recent stuff that's been graded, but that does provide a lot of assistance if you're buying a card that might be a high-end card that's been graded recently. You can actually compare it to the image.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed at, like, most cards are like a fingerprint. There's always something about them that you can pick. Other than, say, like, we noticed, like, stuff like some of the one-piece cards, they're so well made that it is very hard sometimes to pick the difference. You're talking millimeters of difference.
Yeah.
But most, like, sports cards, they're like a fingerprint. You can always, that little bit is slightly cut there differently, like, or the picture's slightly that way. So that helps in that regard. Also, having, there are other set registries out there as well which help, where people might have uploaded copies of their cards that weren't previously imaged to their set registry, but I guess that's more of a collector kind of component to it, whereas the population report gives you all the details of the card, when it was done, what grade it got, and so forth.
Yeah, because I think for me, there's so many different variants of cards these days, and I also use it from that sort of educational point. I think the other thing too is, which is lesser done, but when people are taking high-end cards, replacing the patches with a more aesthetically pleasing card to then resell at a higher value. Like, this stuff does go on. So I think for me, having that registry to use as a data point is just absolutely invaluable. So
for sure.
Interestingly, with the high-end stuff, most people do get caught when they swap it out because people are everywhere and they've seen most of them, and they
blowout
get picked
forums.
up.
Wasn't there
like
a Kobe
detectives.
with the little round patch, and all of a sudden
the Lakers
it was like
one,
three colours, and every other one just had one bit of jersey in it?
Yep. But the problem is, too, to go with that, is that at the end of Upper Deck's run of production run, when they were losing the license, they pumped out so many cool patches into cards numbered to like 199. So there's also that element of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to interrupt Laine, Jesse and Ray to take a timeout and hear from our very good friends at US Sports Cards Australia. Thank you so much to US Sports Cards Australia for your ongoing support. Go to ussportscardsaustralia.com.au. You will find a range of products available on their website. Sports cards breaks, WWE, singles cards, collectible protection, including memorabilia protection, sleeves and bags, trading card one-touches, trading card top-loaders, hobby boxes, sports memorabilia, and of course, Ross's beloved Check Out My Cards Australia. If you're not familiar with Check Out My Cards Australia, it is a consignment service. Go to the Check Out My Cards Australia. There is a submission form there for you to complete. On that form, write "You Can't Comp This." You will get a free submission process. It's normally 6 cents per card. Ross is doing that on special at the moment to encourage people to submit their cards. Ross's current problem is he's selling more cards than he is putting onto the website. Thank you so much to the team at US Sports Cards Australia. Okay, and we are back. We're going to continue on with our conversation, grading A to Z, and we're going to talk about pricing models.
Jesse, could you please talk to us about the different pricing models you have for grading cards?
Yeah, so we offer bulk services as well as up to priority. So it's pretty much bulk, standard, express and priority. The entry points are around, for bulk, about 50 AUD a card that we offer to the consumer base. And then it slightly increments around an extra 80 or so depending on the turnaround speeds that you select. But generally the entry point for bulk grading is around the 50 mark AUD.
And Ray, what would you like to add about the pricing for your...
I'm curious about comic grading prices.
The grading of comic books.
I might have some comics that
It's actually not that bad. So grading a comic book, even being on a bigger scale of actual being a book, it's actually 25 USD per book. So it's not that expensive at all. And then grading a signature is 45 USD per book.
Okay.
So ideally, I think grading in general with pricing is pretty fair considering we are in Australia, and we do have to ship all the way to the States and back. It's just kind of the shipping that really...
The shipping's the worst part.
Yes.
I have a couple of slabbed comics, one of which broke in transit when I was moving house. So how would I go about, say, fixing? Is there a cost to repair slabs?
Yeah. So this is the only problem we have with being here. From the day it's shipped from CGC, you have 14 days.
Oh, it's definitely longer than that.
You do. Look, luckily on my end, from the time I receive the shipping details, I do have people's submissions back within 7 to 8 days.
Okay.
So the minute they do arrive, I don't delay on doing quality control. I go through it immediately. And if I have to log a mechanical error, I will log that on the day. I'll then email CGC, and then they will actually send me a shipping label on them to send back to them. But if you're going to falsify your claim, they will actually deem it unnecessary, and then they'll sting you back just to get it back. So you've got to really claim for the right reason.
But that's why we deal... As a consumer, you want to deal with a submitter that will do all this for you, so you don't
100%.
have to worry about those type of...
And this is why you're paying a middleman.
Correct.
You're not doing it yourself. This is why he does it, I do it. We handle that for the customer, and we'll do it to the very end until you're happy and everything's on perfect point. And obviously we want you guys to be happy with your collectibles, and we want you to come back and keep enjoying this hobby.
So Laine, we've only got 20 minutes left of the panel, but could you run us through quickly the PSA pricing model?
I won't go through every category.
We've got 15 minutes to cover that, and then we'll go.
Yes, otherwise we'll be here. If anybody really wants to know, I've got a sheet with all the pricing over at my table.
They should have a special PSA calculator.
Yeah, you kind of do sometimes. Every time they change prices, I literally groan because I know I'm going to have to update a massive list. But
plus currency.
It seems like it shifts a lot too.
There's been a few shifts this year for a variety of reasons, but look, realistically, they usually only do it once a year in January. But ultimately, look, I'd say probably 80% of our cards, if not more, are in two categories. We've got the under 200 non-sport category, under 200 US in value. So that's technically the graded value of the card is under 200 US. And for us, that's normally $40. We're doing $37.50 today, though, at the show.
Fantastic.
And weirdly, the under 500 category, which covers everything, it doesn't matter what it comes from, is $42.50. So there's only $2.50 difference at the moment between the two categories.
Okay.
And that includes just, your grading, your shipping, your insurance, customs duties, GST, taxes, all those lovely things that we all love.
And is there a speed difference between the two categories?
There's a little bit at the moment. So TCG is, as I said before, the surge in issues, like the Pokemon surge at the moment is causing the turnaround time issues. And the TCG categories are the longest ones by far. So they're saying 4 to 5 months at the moment, whereas we're still seeing 2 to 3 months on the under 500 category. So sometimes that $2.50 extra might save you a month or two.
Yeah. And do you want to really quickly touch on the upcharging again, or have we covered that?
Oh, look, if you submit a card that say you value it at a PSA 9 as $180 US, you submit it in the under 200 category, it gets a 10, it's now worth $400 US, they'll upcharge you to the under $500 category. That's essentially what it is. The reason behind it is because people used to submit high value cards in the under $200 category, or back when they had an under $100 category when I started. And just pay the bulk fee, because it only took 8 weeks. It used to take 8 weeks to do cards in under $100, and it was like $8 US a card. That's how long ago it was. But people would play the game, and they would send them in that, and then
it was a huge flipping market. People did that, brought them back, and just sold them on, and there was an absolute massive margin to be made.
There was a lot. Now it's a lot more expensive than that, but you know, there's still, if you're right, you play it right, there's plenty of margin to be made in a lot of cards, and it's just about what you send.
So my buddy the other night, we were having dinner, and he was talking to me about $1,000 upcharge that he had on a Kobe Kaboom. So it was the ultimate sweet and sour moment for him.
It must have got a 10, I reckon.
It got a 10.
Oh no, your $2,000 card's worth $20,000. What a nightmare.
As I said, a lot of people are okay with it, and like, as a business, and I'm not sure if these guys do something similar, we understand that sometimes these costs come at a shock to people. So we're not going to be like, oh, you must pay tomorrow. We're happy to work with them if they need to pay it off over a couple of weeks or whatever. You know, we want them to get their card back. We're happy for them, but it's just part of it. We also are a business. We need to get the money as well. But we're not just going to be give us your money or you don't get your card tomorrow
Yep,
sort of
yep.
thing. We'll work with them.
I think this leads in really well with the customer service element of this, providing these services. I guess my next question would be preparing your cards for grading. Obviously, we want to look after our stuff. We don't want to damage it before we get it graded, but we also don't want to send off a card if it's got fingerprints on it and whatnot. Cleaning services, pre-grading preparation, what do you guys offer in general? What different services are available?
Can we start with Ray?
Yeah.
So in regards to any comic book submissions that come my way,
Yep.
depending on what we're handling, but majority of the time we don't handle any books without wearing latex gloves.
Yep.
So gloves is an essential thing for me.
course.
All right. My desk at all times is just dedicated to grading. So we have a whole table set up with lighting, certain equipment, and we've got, in regards to what we have, we've kind of invested in a little bit of higher value equipment.
Yep.
And that just gives me and Jesse obviously opportunity to really inspect and evaluate the collectibles coming our way.
Yeah.
That's actually
Right.
a very pragmatic way to approach it, having a dedicated space, because I know I use my office space for all different types of things, and actually it's quite a nightmare cleaning it and tidying it. And
Yeah, no, we don't.
Yep.
Jesse and I don't mix business with pleasure, so we've got specific dedicated grading rooms.
it's very
And
logical,
because
honestly.
It has to be, because look,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we
yeah.
are handling other people's stuff.
Yeah.
We can't risk having other clutter mix in with that kind of stuff. And we have invested in different sorts of equipment to help us give the best possible outcome to the customer.
Yeah.
How do you clean a book before you send it off though?
Yeah.
So cleaning books. So cleaning is a bit of a stringent process because you have to use a certain non-lubricant chemical that has to run over the book, because you can't, end of the day, you are dealing with paper.
Yeah.
And moisture damages the book and anything
course.
more. We have a specific chemical that I use along with fiber optic cloths and little bits and pieces. And we just have gotten in a printing and pressing machine, all right, which I'm not understanding how to use it as of yet. So I'm testing it on myself.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I've got a few books that are very old. They're crinkled, ripped, bit tarnished. So I'm practicing on my own stuff first.
Yeah.
And then once I master on what I'm doing, that service will be provided to the customers. But if that's something we can, because look, CGC charge $10 USD per book, per press, per clean. When you add that to a grading bill, you start climbing up in numbers, and the bill starts getting gradually bigger and bigger.
Of course.
So we want to eliminate that for the customer and offer that as a service that we provide.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just handled with care. You know, delicacy, gloves. You got foils. You don't want fingerprints on a book because they will dock that. Like our machinery is good, but their machinery is tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
So
of
whatever
course.
we think we can see, they've got supervision. So you've got to really handle it with care.
Thank you.
Yeah, just on the TCG side, I personally don't use any adhesive, so we don't apply any like liquids or anything like that. Just in regards to, it's technically, you know, doctoring a card in the eyes of some of the grading companies. Now, fingerprints, we're able to, I guess, clean those off in regards to TCGs, but we're very cautious again with what items we're handling. A lot of the Pokemon vintage stuff, like the foils, the holos on Pokemon vintage are very sensitive. So if there are areas that we're looking at to potentially clean, but we think that might, you know, damage the card further, we won't touch that, just to be cautious of. But yeah, we pretty much just offer pre-grading assessment across everything. BGS 10 contenders, PSA 10 contenders, BGS 9.5s. And we let the customer decide. Again, you know, we're here to get the best result possible for them. So depending on what outcomes they're happy with, that's what we generally send off for them. So, and yeah, as Ray mentioned, a lot of the lighting kit, there's a lot of stuff that comes to light under certain lighting.
yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people miss it because just in natural lighting, you just don't see these things, right? So we try to inspect the best that we can, provide them with images pretty much of the defects, just so they can see. And, you know, a lot of customers said like, well, you know, we wouldn't have thought that defect even existed on these particular cards. So yeah, it's good to educate and yeah, pretty much that.
Yeah, we have in the past offered our own in-house cleaning service,
Yep.
but due to the volume of cards we started to get through during COVID, we actually started working with partners who do it as their own individual business.
Yep.
So we actually work with Card Cleaning Australia now as our partner. We have done for several years, and they've got a lot of experience across Pokemon, sports cards. They understand what makes a card grade well and what doesn't. So we basically take cards in for customers. We'll hand deliver them to them. They'll do the cleaning process and come back to us, and then we'll send them for grading. just because they can get through more volume than we could if we were doing it
Yeah.
in-house. But yeah, like it's the same sort of thing as what these guys have said. The biggest thing to keep in mind is just avoiding putting liquid directly on a card.
Okay.
You know, we're not talking about necessarily just straight paper, we're talking about cardboard, but it's the same thing at the end of the day. You get a bit of liquid in the edge of a card because that's where they're open. It starts to blow up. Like there's so many issues you can run into. So, you know, we, based on the advice from the grading companies, you know, we tell people to avoid using polishes and things like that too, because
Yeah,
there's
and that's
you know,
the elephant
there's
in
a
the
whole
room here too, because
yeah.
I think and no one's touched on that, and I
yeah,
definitely
there's a
want to ask you about it.
whole world associated with card restoration that's
So
come to
what
light in the
can't
past.
you do to a card too?
Basically,
I think that's the other
anything
thing.
to add or subtract from the card. That is essentially along the lines of what they say.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that, but basically, if you're putting a substance on it to add to the card, i.e.
Enhance
wax,
it. Yeah.
to try and buff out some, you know, scratches in a hollow or prism or whatever it might be, technically that's not allowed.
Yeah, so like there's a whole company out there called Kurt's Card Care.
Yeah.
And
And there's
basically,
actually a few
Not
now.
back
There's
to
not,
Kurt,
there's,
not
I've actually
again.
seen multiple now that are
Yeah.
taking on his success and actually building their own company
Yeah.
around it. Yeah.
but I think the problem with Kurt's Card Care is that PSA also won't grade those cards if
They know.
yeah.
If they pick it
This
up.
is the thing.
Yeah.
They've got to be able to pick it up, right?
Yeah.
So they've said that if they knowingly are submitted and they find that, then you'll be banned and so, you know, all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. But the biggest thing is you know, finding it, right? So maybe if you've got a batch of 100 cards come through and they've all been polished with something,
Can
the
and
grader's
Mr.
going to
Sheen
end up
and-
with,
Yeah.
you know, sticky fingers and he's going to go, hang on, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But interestingly, I don't know if you've seen on social media over the past few days, PSA did a survey to customers. One of the questions was, would you pay $7.99 to have your card cleaned and lightly buffed to remove scratches? So we don't know what's going on there. There's been no
reckon-
information released yet as to what that actually is supposed to mean.
Almost
That
sounds like a resurfacing.
PSA is trying to capitalise on something.
We don't know yet. It's a survey that went out. It could just be a, you know,
No harm in asking the question.
it could be asking the question and to get people to answer it and go, haha, you said you'd do that. No, I doubt it.
If they're going to be doing that, then why can't you use Kurt's Card Care? Like, to me, that sounds like...
Well, I don't know what they mean by buffing
Well,
it either.
they'll
Like,
have
they've-
internal
there's
control systems.
no like discussion around are they using like anything to do that, or is it just actually a clean cloth? Like there's no description what they actually mean. It's just it raised some eyebrows.
It could be a number of things.
It could just be that they're expanding their services, because I also saw now they're doing a cleaning service. They also offer card grading protection afterwards too. So
These are part of the like the survey we saw was
Yeah.
things like that. Like, do you
Yeah.
want sleeves? Do you want a 3D rendering? Like, there's all these different things they're looking at doing
Yeah.
as add-ons.
So I think we've got time for one more question, and I think again I'd love to start at the end. So can we please talk about the future of grading? What do you think is going to be next from grading companies as they progress into the future?
I mean, that's a good question. The future of grading. I'd like to see the grading companies expand to different levels of grading. So we've got things now called manga books, and they're getting bigger and bigger. They're becoming very highly sought after.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't think grading companies have the capabilities yet to grade kind of thickness on that level. But I think to expand business and to continue doing what they're doing, and and expand the hobby collecting side of the world and gradables in general, I'd like to see them kind of expand. But I get it's also a costly thing because you're going to start getting to bigger packaging and then it's bigger boxes. And I want to say that grading has, or collectibles in general, has a very big future, but I think we're going to see a bit of a decline soon until we start understanding.
Is a decline needed though? Like the volumes we saw.
I think it's going to be
through COVID.
declining, not based on the collectible itself. I think it's based on the charges that we're going to start incurring.
Yep.
No one knows what's happening with these tariffs at the moment.
True.
So that's going to play a big part of the collectible world, especially from our side of town.
Yeah.
If you're going to start on charging a customer that additional extra,
Yeah.
people are going to start really wanting to double second or double guess.
Of course.
Do I really want to send it off?
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Public
You know what I
enemy
mean?
number
But-
one of the hobby is Donald Trump. Like, who would have thought we'd be talking about that?
It is,
Yeah.
look, and that's something you have to explain to every customer.
Yeah.
As of now, we are grading still. And I said, look, there is no charge. If
Yeah.
charges are incurred, we will let you know. We'll adjust accordingly, but it's
Yeah.
something you have to be understanding in.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
The
look,
community
and I just
adapts
think,
to that though.
yes, 100%. Look, and grade, look, there's so many options in grading. I'd love to see bigger scale of posters, or
Yeah.
even go to A3 size. Currently, they're keeping it at A4. But again, we do have manga that's really
Yeah.
thick. And if they're grading VHS, well,
Video
isn't manga a little bit
games.
thicker than a VHS? Like, can't we really do a manga book? But no, I think grading is very positive in the future. given where we are, I think it's just going to be a bigger and bigger thing. And the more generations that get involved, I think it's just going to be an everlasting thing for a lot of people.
And what about BGS? What are they doing to move the company forward after having such a significant loss to PSA in the last 5 years?
Like a rebirth or a growing,
To my understanding, again, there's been a lot going on at Beckett. They have just pretty much joined Collectivists. So again, there was a lot going on there, but the representatives have said there's a lot of exciting things to come from this new company that have acquired them, and they're implementing. Well, they're saying that they're trying to implement better interfaces with like the submission process and whatnot, which is great to see.
Yep.
I've had a lot of positive dealings with Beckett. I haven't had any really issues with submission returns. There might be the one-off where a slab might be damaged within the returns, but their consistency has been fantastic across the board as well. And again, their slabs are very durable. In comparison, between a PSA slab and a Beckett slab, Beckett actually encased the card with like a small little film within the slab, whereas PSA is just sonically sealing the plastic on top of the card, but it's still loose technically in the PSA slab. But in terms of the future of grading, I definitely would love to see them open up here in Australia.
Yeah.
It would be amazing if they set up shop here. Both Beckett and PSA, any grading company, honestly.
Even in Asia, if there's like one in Japan that you could submit to, so you don't have to go all the way across. I think that would be even a good step.
Because it is a very daunting process, right? Sending your cards overseas. Again, the wait times especially.
Yep.
So I feel like, the expansion is very needed. Hopefully one day we do get that service here.
Yeah.
But in terms of the future of grading, I just feel like, as Ray mentioned, there's so many people that are getting on board with it. And again, the options are seemingly growing in terms of what you can and can't grade in today's world with these companies. So I'd like to see that, to be honest.
Look, for me, I think it's going to be technology. I think we're going to see more technology somehow going into slabs. What that is, I'm not 100% sure just at this point in time.
PSA needs to address that issue.
But things
definitely.
like using NFC to, instead of scanning, and you can touch on it, and it'll go to something. It'll give you more of an expansive understanding of that card. But then again, I've noticed, and it's pretty obvious across social media, that there's a huge interest in the AI element associated with grading.
We have to touch on AI. 100%.
Yeah, of course. If you look at, if I'm talking about AI grading or along those lines, you're going to be talking about Tag. Right? They're the current leader in that area. There's a few others, but they're the ones who are definitely seeing that the surge in submissions they have seen recently has been crazy. Right? They cannot cope. They're in that situation say a company like PSA was during COVID. They're getting more cards than they can know what to do with. They're actually getting more and more customer complaints as a result because they haven't had as many of those before. Now they are, because it's just that cycle of building. I wouldn't be surprised if you see more and more of that type of AI approach going across into PSA. Who knows? We might even see in the future under 500 cards all become AI graded at PSA, and it's only high-end cards that a human gets involved in. I don't know. That could be where we head.
I'd be interested to see if PSA buys out a company like Tag and then brings that knowledge and technology into their own company.
Yeah, they did buy out a AI-based imaging company sort of around the COVID era to supposedly help with centering and things like that. We don't know what developments happened internally on that since then, so it's all pretty black box. But look, I really feel that stuff is going to, PSA will come on board with it because they are a pretty, their owner made his money on technology platform, so it'd be stupid not to.
All right. Well, lastly, I guess we'll tie this off now. Laine, Jesse, Ray, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much,
and
lads.
talking everything grading. We would have had plenty more questions, but really appreciate your time today and hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you
Russell,
so much.
Thanks for hosting another panel with me. We'll be back at 3:00 with the Collector Spotlight. So until then, enjoy the show, everyone.